Hello, everyone. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I think that should cover all the possibilities. Welcome to the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk for our very last show of the week of this lovely Friday night for me. In fact, we have had a wonderful first week of Hacktoberfest. I hope you have as well. For those of you who are new here, if this is your first show, this is the Raise.dev Hacktoberfest Help Desk, and our aim is to help you with all your burning open source and Hacktoberfest questions that you might have throughout the month of October. We are... Cool, great. We are going to be here for the next hour and a bit, maybe 2 hours, chatting with one of our special guests and trying to get you all the answers that you can need to questions big or small. Those could be questions such as, where do I start with Hacktoberfest and how do I start my first PR, all the way through to, I have a specific issue and I don't know how to solve this error message. They can be big, small, specific, wide, whatever you feel like. And if you do have any questions and you're not quite ready to ask them yet, or you get those questions in the future, you can just drop them into the Twitch chat. But if you want to submit a question later, you can find our question submission form at the URL below, raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. On that lovely website, you can also find a notify me button form to sign up to get notified about our weekly schedule. So this show runs 3 times a day. We're running all throughout Hacktoberfest. We've got some amazing guests coming on. I'll be introducing our current guest in a moment, but we've also got guests for the next 20 odd something days. We have currently 38 guests lined up and many more to come. You can find our schedule at twitch.tv RaisDev's schedule. That is updated on a weekly basis as soon as Twitch lets us upload the next schedule. So I'll be getting next week's schedule up on that site over the weekend. So you'll be able to find out who's coming up next. And also you can follow us on Twitter at RaisDevs for those announcements as they happen as well. At the end of the show, we'll give you a little sneak peek of who we've got coming on next week as well. I'm feeling generous. Why not? So as well as the Hacktoberfest stuff, Raise.dev also launched this week. And why are we here? Why are we doing the help desk? Who is Raise.dev? Raise.dev is a service to help you level up your software engineering career. We are here whether you're trying to get your first developer job or your second developer job, or you're trying to get a promotion, or you're trying to change careers, or you're just trying to finish a project. What we aim to do is help you get the skills you need and the experience you need to make that next step. Right now, you can sign up to Raise.dev whilst you're in early access completely for free, and we'll match you with one of our expert coaches who will have a kickoff call with you and work on your goals, and will help you meet those goals. So you can find out more about that in Raise.dev. If you've already signed up, thank you so much. We've had someone already ask about when they can expect to be matched with their coach. We have been very fortunate and very thankful that here in our first week of early access, we've had a really great level of demand. We are doing what we can to get that to everyone as soon as possible, and we're bringing on new coaches as we speak. We actually had 3 join today to make sure that we get everyone matched with coaches as quick as we can. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for joining us during this early access period. So all that leaves me to do now is welcome our fantastic guest for the day. We're all in the right place. Please welcome Will Russell to the stream, everyone. Hey,
hello,
Will.
hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, I've just finished my first week of Zoom University. That's what I keep calling it. My housemate is like, is that just what we're calling it now? Is it just Zoom University? So yeah, it's been going pretty well.
That must be such a surreal experience, especially you said it was your last year, right? So this is like, you've a relatively normal university, and now it's just all out the window now.
Yeah, well, it's actually worked out quite well because a lot of my friends have gone off to do year in industries. So it would have just been a few of us here this year. But because everything's remote, it doesn't really feel like they're gone. So it's actually kind of worked out. Sort of.
Very cool. And also, as we spoke a little bit before the show, another perk of being in your final year is you are not in like the prison-like university dorms that are being widely reported on the news or anything there, right?
They're a good like 2 miles over in the other direction to the uni. I'm like nice and safe here. Me and my housemate don't really leave the house. Computers are, you know, very easy to use in the house. So why leave?
It's one of the few advantages. And actually that's kind of why we decided to do this help desk, because normally Hacktoberfest, one of the things John and I really enjoy is going to Hacktoberfest meetups, and physical events as we know them are dead. So we're all hanging out with people here. Yeah, exactly. So thank you everyone for joining us. Just again, a reminder, you can post questions to us anytime, but in the meantime, let's kick things off. So we've kind of like rotated in paths around each other on social media and at various hackathons for a while, but I don't think I've ever actually had the opportunity to ask you like how you got into all of this. You suddenly appeared in the hackathon scene one day, and before I knew it, you were doing literally everything. And I'd love to hear about how that happened and how you came to become part of this community.
Yeah, so I'm one of the kind of like new organizers in the community, but people wouldn't necessarily know that. I've only really been, so I didn't know what a hackathon was at all before I started university. So coming up in November will be my 2-year anniversary of doing hackathons, which is quite exciting. And in my first year, I started off with Hack the Midlands in Birmingham. Big shout out to Hack the Midlands. And then I went to Aston Hack, another hackathon based in Birmingham. and I just kind of got this itch of, those are they're quite fun, let's keep going. So in spring term, I went to 3 more: Royal Holloway, Surrey, as well as Warwick Hack. That was it, and had a great time at all of those as well. Really good community vibe.
Yeah.
And then over the summer, I ended up helping organize Hack the Midlands 4. Now, with the nature of kind of how I am, I just kind of, when a project presents itself at me, I just throw myself at it. So I just got super invested, did lots of different things, and it just tried to make the event the best thing possible, because as it was my first hackathon the year before, there was things that I felt would have been beneficial to a first timer. So I wanted to try and make sure those things, were there. And so I had a really good time kind of getting involved. But there's one problem of organizing a hackathon. It takes a long time to do.
It does take a long time to do.
And, I wanted to keep doing this thing of being kind of like an organizer rather than a hacker, but not having to like spend 6 months at a time or like 9 months at a time getting it ready to do it. So this is kind of where like the organizing career, you could say, kicked off.
Sure.
The week after I went to Hack Sheffield. Now, a few of you, I think Aaron's watching. I met pretty much the entirety of the European MLH coaches in one go, minus Gregor, but I did meet Gregor at another hackathon.
It's impossible to avoid Gregor. He's everywhere. He'll show up eventually.
I will bump into him at some point. But I basically met them all there. After Jack, who was the coach at Hack the Midlands, introduced me to everyone, and I was a volunteer at Sheffield, generally just helping out my friend from school. And I kind of didn't really know what MLH coaching was. Didn't really know what MLH. I knew what MLH was. I used to look at their events page, but that was about it. I didn't really know anything else.
And how they really contribute to hackathons or anything like that. And
I just knew they were important, but I didn't know to the detail. So I got this crash course from all the coaches of all of the different things that they get up to, and I'm like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. And so I just kept volunteering at hackathons every weekend in my second year of university.
This is a very familiar story to me.
Now, I don't want to tell my lecturers this, but cancelling exams really paid in my favour.
It's all right. We won't send this recording to any of them.
It really did pay in my favour. Like my assignments, I'm really good at doing assignments and actual work, but exams, that wasn't looking too hot for me. Mostly because, just they were a thing in the distance. So I helped
until they're not.
Until they're not, well, that's going to happen this year. They'll hit me and I'll be like, I actually have to do them this year. But I volunteered at some more hackathons, generally just getting to know these wonderful group of people. And it was when coronavirus started to hit. I was in the process of applying to become an MLH coach. And because I applied back in 2019, when I met all the coaches, my application was lost in the wonderful world of trying to do recruitment, which we can talk about a little bit later, because I've done a lot of that recently for the MLH fellowship.
It's in your title down below, so we have to explain that at some point.
We'll talk about
that recruitment system, so we can have a nice cry about that.
That's what Swift and I keeps us up at night is recruitment. But basically my application got lost, and I just didn't hear back for ages. So I emailed in, they were like, oh, sorry, it got lost. And a couple times it just got lost. I think they clearly just didn't want me. Now I'm joking. And I actually tell Ryan, who kind of part of the coaches program, about how, he always just didn't want me clearly. And he doesn't like it when I make those jokes. But basically that kind of got lost. And then coronavirus started hitting. So I'm thinking, I'm not going to get, they're probably not going to hire any more coaches at the moment, because there's not really any events going on. And then this wonderful thing that some people heard of called Hack Quarantine appeared.
Some people heard of literally everywhere for a solid couple of months.
My good friend Jack is like a sister to me, very irritating, but I can't get rid of her. We were just, Jack just came up with this wonderful idea and was like, Will, we need to do a thing. And 10 days later, a hackathon was born, where we worked nonstop for literally 10 days straight. I just would wake up, I would do Hack Quarantine, maybe eat, maybe wash, and then sleep. I was just constantly doing it, but I loved every second of it. It didn't feel like work. It just came naturally. And those 4 weeks of planning and running that event, I feel like that's kind of what accelerated me, because I learned so much in that time from the, dealing with managing lots of people, working out how to do a digital event, meeting new people, working with different cultures that I hadn't necessarily interacted with, trying to, do an event around coronavirus, which is a very sensitive topic at the time. At the moment, I feel like everyone's kind of normalized a little bit to it, but at the time it was a very scary thing.
And also, like, it's worth mentioning that you all were so quick and on the ball with Hack Quarantine that, like, really it felt like the moment people decided that, like, okay, now was the time to stay home and actually quarantine, like, that was it. Hack Quarantine was happening. So when you said, like, you were learning about digital events, I think, like, not only were y'all learning about digital events, but really, like, y'all were, like, the first learning with how events are going to be for the next year, really. It was insane. And you joke about it being like at the same time, but our opening ceremony finished about half an hour before the UK went into lockdown. So it did kind of feel like we were like, well, we're in lockdown, everyone should probably go, take part in the hackathon. Like, oh, wow, cool.
Our opening ceremony finished, and then we all tuned into the news and went, well, we couldn't have made that timing any better, really.
Could we? That's wild.
Yeah, so I learned a lot during Hack Quarantine, especially because it was a very different type of event. Like, typically hackathons are over a weekend, especially in-person ones. No one goes to a hackathon for a week. That would be a bit insane. But, doing it over 3 weeks was a very different take. And we used that to try things and experiment. And because no one else had done this, it didn't really matter if we did it wrong, because, if you don't try, you don't get anything, right? We could just sit there and, play it safe, or we could try and make this great experience. And there was definitely some things that didn't quite go as well as we thought. Like, we had these things called checkpoints where people could demo their hacks, but we struggled to get the engagement there. But other things like our live stream just had so much interesting content. Lots of different people from all over the world. And, I got to meet some really great people. I actually met Harshal, who's one of the MLH coaches in APAC.
Harshal very well.
Me and Harshal were chatting loads during that. And he was just really interested in, how we were doing it and stuff. And, I really like Harshal. I've got to know him now, especially at MLH. But, that event, if it wasn't for that event, and, I probably would have never really interacted with people, outside of the UK in the same way. So it's definitely like, wasn't just, it helped bring all these communities together. And I think that was what was really kind of magical about it. Hack Quarantine was a thing that happened. I did nearly die after doing like 4 weeks of it straight. My parents were like, do you want to do
sleep?
Like, human? Yeah. My university discovered who I was because even though I do all this hackathon stuff, my university doesn't really do hackathons. Hackman Midlands is kind of its own separate thing. So they didn't really know I existed, but I was doing all this cool stuff in the community. So when my name then appeared on Hack Quarantine, I had the Department of Computer Science being like, who are you again? Can we write an article about you and stuff? Because this is really cool.
That's very typical of the moment. I feel like that's the university hackathon organizer experience. Suddenly you're in an article by your university.
Yeah, it's like, oh, cool. I'm now on the university's website and on their social media, but they didn't know who I was about a month ago. But, it was really interesting and definitely very different to what I was used to. Mm-hmm. So Hack Quarantine kind of excelled me. I basically just learned how to do hackathon organizing on steroids for 4 weeks straight. But I don't recommend doing that. Very unhealthy, but I did gain a lot from it.
Yeah, for sure. Which I guess leads into, I guess that's how you became more involved with MLH and got to the capacity where you are now, right?
Yeah, so at the end of Hack Quarantine, I actually had so when you become a coach, you do go through a number of interviews. And the last one is with Swift, the co-founder and CEO of Major League Hacking, who I know some of you watched on the live stream last night. Yeah. And Swift and I basically just chatted about it wasn't really an interview. It was just us talking about Hack Quarantine and how I'd basically just created a lot of extra work for him. So it was just interesting, just talking to him about that. And they shortly afterwards, they were really happy to have me on as a coach, especially because I was one of the kind of few people who'd kind of played around with this digital event thing. And having a few more people might be quite helpful. So
absolutely.
And so, you may wonder how. So I became a coach at the end of April officially, and then the MLH fellowship started in June. Now,
which we should probably take a moment to explain what that is in case people weren't watching last night.
I love the fellowship. So when COVID hit, MLH did a similar thing to us, which was there's a lot of people are losing their internships. Or in our
Right.
case, lots of people can't go to hackathons. What can we do about this? And
Yeah.
MLH looked at this and was like, well, people can't get internships. They can't get that experience that's really important for getting a career when you graduate. Especially as someone who has tried to apply for internships and stuff, it's difficult when you don't have any experience on your CV because when it comes to the humongous number of applications they get, as I know now from recruiting, it's very difficult to stand out without some experience. So MLH wanted to try and create a educational program where people could spend 12 weeks working on open source projects with the guidance of a mentor, as well as everyone kind of maintainers, other fellows, to learn, these important skills while doing it in a really cool fashion of doing open source, which I imagine a lot of people at university haven't done before. So
I probably haven't heard all that much about, to be honest, aside from like using it. I feel like they don't, professors don't take a lot of time to go through like, hey, this is GCC, by the way, it's like open source.
Yeah, I remember when I was like before uni, it was like things to make your CV look good. Contribute to an open source project, and I'm like, what does that mean? Like, how does one contribute to an open source? Like, it says Google like Chromium's open source, but like, what does that mean? It's definitely something that we feel like would be a really good way to teach these fellows a lot about engineering and stuff, but also open them up to this new world they may not have kind of experienced before. So that's kind of like the quick kind of TLDR of what the MLH fellowship is. But we've in the process, quite busy doing it, in the process of starting the second iteration of the fellowship, the full 2020 fellowship, or batch 1 as we call it, because some of it's batch 0. And this time we've added a few changes. So we've actually got 3 programs now, and I might pilot a 4th one, by the way, Swift. You don't know that yet, but just saying.
Heard it here first.
And so we've got the Explorer program now, which is designed for those who don't necessarily have experience like those doing open source. Kind of a little bit more kind of early on, kind of when I started doing hackathons, where I didn't really know what I was doing, but I'm super keen to learn. I just needed those opportunities and guidance to get me there. So the Explorer program is an opportunity for those to learn a little bit more, build out their portfolio and kind of get the guidance to learn different skills that are very important in software engineering, like testing, documentation, writing clean, readable code that other people can work on, teamwork, those kind of things. So I spent the last 2 weeks nonstop building the Explorer program and working out how that's going to work. And I'm pretty excited. I think that's the one I'm most excited for. Maybe I'm a little biased, but that
does sound pretty epic. We have Raise.dev provides a lot of coaches for the fellowship program, and I know that there's already some exciting conversations happening in our shared channel.
Oh, nice. Yes. So for those of you who don't know, Raise.dev kind of help us with mentorship and help provide the mentors. So John Britton, who I know some of you talked to on Wednesday, we end up working with him a lot.
Well. Hi, John.
Oh, is he? Hi, John. But yes, so we end up working with them, which is pretty fun and exciting. And then to wrap things up on the fellowship, we have the third and final bit, which is the new externship, which we're piloting at the moment, which is designed kind of like a successor to the open source. So let's say you've now learned, you've learned how to do things kind of in a team and kind of like at an engineering kind of company sort of size. But now you want to go and actually work on projects at a company like an internship, but in a kind of different sense where you're still a fellow and you get access to the extra things that fellows do, like additional talks and stuff and so on.
The pods and the mentoring.
And all of the kind of fun bits and bobs, which is part of my job.
And very importantly, an environment that is being designed to be remote and globally friendly rather than a well-meaning company winging it and doing their best.
There's here's a Slack invite, here's some Zoom calls, whereas we're trying to do more than just having a Discord server and having Zoom. We're trying to connect that all together. So the externship is a great opportunity for those who are looking to they'll work with a company for the duration of their kind of 10 or 12 weeks, depending on how long they end up working on it. And they'll be, working like an intern, getting paid an actual salary, I believe, or kind of contracting with, I don't know the exact details of the externship, but it's a very cool program. And I'm excited to see when we officially launch it, probably in 2021 with a number of different companies. So we've got this nice little curriculum coming along here. I want to add a 4th curriculum thing, which Swift actually mentioned last night, which is kind of DevRel related. And making it kind of, doing some DevRel stuff in there as well, because it's really hard to get into DevRel.
If you incredibly hard to get into DevRel.
And there's not really you can't really learn DevRel as such. It's not as simple as like going to like Code Academy and learning.
No, it's something that happens to you. It's not.
Yeah.
Not sorry. You go into it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that is kind of the fellowship, kind of like TLDR. Cool. So how I got into the fellowship was kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. I joined to become a coach, and normally what a coach would do if you go to the coach's website is they'll work on stuff like you'll go to events and you'll represent MLH, you know, empowering hackers, representing sponsors, and generally just doing a lot of cool stuff. Yeah. And I was super excited to do that because I was already doing that. But the idea of having MLH, you know, help me afford the travel and allow me to go to places that I hadn't been before was really, really cool. You know,
like Sheffield.
Like Sheffield. And so, you know, being able to go to lots of different places sounded really appealing because that was what I was already doing. And then COVID hit. So, you know, I've got my fingers crossed one day maybe. Yeah. But with the fellow, coaches don't just do event staffing. And at the moment, we're actually kind of tweaking how the coaches program works, especially because there's a lot of different things they can do. And one of them was helping us do phone screens for the fellowship admissions. And as someone who was stuck with their parents, bored, and just looking for something to do that wasn't that quarantine related, right? Basically, we got the opportunity to do some phone screens for the fellowship. And I thought, oh, this sounds pretty cool. You know, I'll give it a go. So I ended up doing, I want to say like 50 phone screens over a few weeks.
That's a lot of phone screens.
And I met some really cool people. Really had a good time. And I learned a lot about recruiting because as an intern, it's just this big, you know, you submit an application and then you might get an email back at some point and it's just like a big black hole.
So much happens behind closed curtains that you never get to see or interact with.
Exactly. It's difficult because you don't know if you're doing it right or wrong. And half the time they don't give you proper feedback. So it was really insightful to see it from the other side. And I learned a lot from that kind of experience. And I remember it was just a Sunday evening. I was just finished having dinner with my family. And I just like look at my phone and I've got a message from Swift being like, hey, you know, have you got any availability next week? And I'm like, yeah, I've got nothing on apart from phone screens. He's like, would you be interested in doing some tech screens? And I went, yeah, sounds pretty cool. He's like, cool. Tomorrow we're going to do training with John Britton. You're going to shadow him like 3 times. You're going to do a training call. And then we're going to throw you in the deep end. And I'm like, cool. Sounds good. So I ended up shadowing a few people. And then I did 83 technical interviews in 4 days. And a lot of the fellows will remember me and asking them lots of scary questions. And the thing is, the thing I learned about technical interviewing, that was the thing that really like opened my eyes to recruiting because it's you get to see, because when you submit like an application, you think, I know what I'm doing. You know, I'm know typically better than some people in my course or whatever, but what does that actually mean? And when you're doing interviews, you very quickly see, you know, good candidates and not so good candidates, and it makes you go, oh, that is why I didn't get the internship, or why, you know, and so you learn a lot of things from that, and it's like difficult to put into words, but it was definitely eye-opening. And I know that Aaron, who is watching, I believe, I trained him up over September to do technical interviews for the current fellowship, and he has had the same experience as me. I go, whoa, I feel like I can ace every technical interview now.
So that's a really interesting point there. That like because that's being a fellow is obviously like somewhat different to joining, say, like a usual FANG internship or like a consultancy internship, which is very big in the UK. Like, what were the kind of technical questions that you were asking people? And if I know you're still interviewing for fellow batches, so if you can't say for risk of spoiling the secret sauce, do let me know.
So I can give a little bit of info, but basically we don't do a very standard technical interview. So it's very common that if you go to a technical interview at a company, they'll maybe make you do some, well, actually, don't know if I should say this, but I've never done an actual technical interview. I've had internships in the past, but that's because I know people. And it's definitely who you know, not what you know. But technical interviews, typically you'll do some whiteboarding, maybe, where you'll have to like explain a problem on a whiteboard. They might ask you to write some code on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, or they'll ask you a very kind of like an algorithmic problem, something like you would do on HackerRank or something, but it doesn't feel very real world. Now, at the fellowship, we're all about real world, and we don't like those sort of interview process. It doesn't really work for us. So what we do is we ask people to submit a code sample, which we now do a separate evaluation on to make sure it's up to the quality we're looking for. And then what I'll do is I'll get the fellow to walk me through their code and explain to me what's going on. And I'll stop them at different points and ask them different questions about what's going on to check their understanding, because it's very easy to write a cool project, which you basically copied from a tutorial or just Stack Overflowed the entire thing. But if you're going to go work on React, it's important that you have like understanding of these fundamentals of, JavaScript and stuff. So one of the questions that I will ask pretty much everyone who writes JavaScript is, could you explain to me what a promise is? And some people are very good at explaining that, and some people not so. My favorite one is asking them the difference between async await and a promise, because they'll use both in their code, and I'll be like, so what's the difference? Which is kind of a trick question, because it's just syntactical sugar. It's basically the kind of answer I'm looking for. But some people don't realize that they're...
I had a brief panic moment there. I was like, could I do that? But I thought, okay with that. Cool.
So, it's that kind of sort of stuff.
Awesome.
And so I see a lot of different languages and so on. And sometimes I'm not always familiar with the language. So I have something on like pointers of things that language does well that's different. But the thing is, once you know how to program, it's kind of just the same sort of thing between languages. It's the same sort of kind of, skills that you'll learn that you can experienced developers can jump between different frameworks and languages because it's the similar sort of skills. And so I'll ask those sort of fundamental questions and ask people why they did things the way they did. And if they can, sometimes I get some really interesting answers where I'll actually ask them a really dumb question. I'll be like, why didn't you do it like this? Just seeing if they can tell I'm, making up stuff, or to see if they're worried, because sometimes people will assume that I'm always saying, if I'm saying it, it must be right. But in fact, I might ask them a trick question to see if they, if they're confident and they, understand what they're talking about, they'll, challenge me. And when people challenge me, it's really interesting. So that's kind of like the fellowship technical interview process. We, it's a bit more real world, and we're definitely kind of like tweaking it as the emissions goes on. So we'll be doing it kind of slightly differently for the spring 2021 fellowship. But it's definitely, I know that a lot of people who were fellows much preferred it over a typical like FANG sort of interview where you answer a bunch of like, write out this sorting algorithm or something. Because
Sure. And also very long processes that go on for many. You'll do more than one of those interviews as well. And so I want to pivot a little bit from there into like another capacity that I see you doing a lot in the fellowship is like infrastructure stuff, right? So like there was a time when the fellowship was getting started where so there's like a general a kind of thing that has happened in developer communities, I guess, over the last couple of years, where there's been like shifting of community platforms, and like a lot of places that used to be, for example, Meetup is a big one, like places that used to like Meetup and Lanyard, in fact, places that used to be like the default platforms that we used for certain functions basically stopped being used for those functions, and suddenly like developer communities became a lot harder to organize and orchestrate, and more as from like a perspective of someone trying to reach developer communities became a lot harder to know where they are. And so I was, funny enough, having these conversations with people like Swift who are involved in developer communities in a big way when the fellowship kicked off. And we were talking a lot about like, okay, how do we use Discord for this? Like, what can bots help us do? And then that was when I think I first noticed that like, oh, Will is doing something with MLH here. There's a lot of bot things going on here. So I'd love to hear about the infrastructure side of the fellowship as well, and some of the things you're doing with like the platform to help bring these people together and give them a place to work.
Yeah, for sure. So when I started kind of really learning how to program and, building my own projects was back when I started hackathons as well. And I built this stupid Discord bot called Foodflex. When my friends started university, we were all learning to cook. And so we liked posting photos in Discord of things we were cooking. And I thought, we could make this into a little competition, right? Where each day we can like vote for each other and have a little championship over the term. And this still happens. It's happening right now. Mostly my friends at Warwick University are really into it. I'm not that into it anymore, to be honest. But, I keep the bot running because they love it. So, but that's kind of like what taught me how to kind of write Discord bots. And I did this mostly in Python because that was the only thing I knew at the time. And what happened there was I basically have just kind of like tried to integrate the Discord bots into everything I've done. So a good example would be Hack the Midlands. We wrote a few Discord bots. One of them was like a mentor bot where people could like make a request for a mentor. I made a thing called RapGod that used Nexmo's API, but we got rid of the Nexmo API and then replaced it with the Discord one. So I like to think
I don't know, by the way, Nexmo is like a telephony API, so it's similar to Twilio.
Yeah. Yeah, lets you send text messages. The idea is you could send a text message with a word and it would phone you back with a rap. But instead we replaced the text message with a text channel in Discord and a voice channel in Discord. So I kind of got familiar with the Discord PY API. Now, the Discord API is, in Discord's nature, they love to add new things and change new things and not tell people until they've done it. So things break. And the API breaks fairly frequently. So I got kind of familiar with this and just kind of started building bots all the time. So when the fellowship came around, and Swift basically said to me right before, he's like, yo, have you got an internship? I went, no. He's like, do you want to come do fellowship stuff and just make the hacker experience awesome? And I went, sounds pretty good. So I was thinking, like, this Discord server's cool and all. And he said, if you want to like experiment with a Discord server, be my guest. Do what you think would be best. And I thought, I'm going to write a few bots to help make this experience better because, funnily enough, I've got quite a lot of background in bots, making lots of just rubbish little ones that don't really do much, but it's more about what I learned from doing it than, what they actually do. And I thought, what can I do here to make the fellowship experience better? So the first bot that we built was called Pinbot because Discord really annoyingly has a permission called Manage Channel. And if you want to pin messages, you need to have the Manage Channel permission, but that also lets you then delete messages and other things. And it's like, we don't want that. We want people, we want people in their hackathon teams to be able to pin like, important links to the README and the repo and stuff. But we don't want to be able to let them delete anything on the server. So what we did was I created a very basic Discord bot where you just give it a command, the URL of a message, and it will pin it for you. And then you can do the same thing.
Cool. Right.
Very simple, like 30 lines of code, and it just works.
Very nice, cool. Yeah, so I guess I just want to take a brief tangent for those who haven't used Discord. If you're familiar with kind of any Slack or Slack-alike like work chat-based messaging, it's very similar to that, but it came out of like gamer communities. So it was building on TeamSpeak, so like the idea of having like in-game conversation. But one of the things it got from coming from that legacy that you don't see as much in Slack or things that are like Slacks is this very strong concept of roles. So in like your workplace Slack, you're probably used to like some people have like heightened permissions, like there'll be an admin of the Slack, like an HR and whatever kind of thing. Discord basically lets you create an unlimited amount of roles and you can name them, and it has very granular permissions. So you can define for all different kinds of features, you can toggle basic permissions on and off at a very granular level and assign those to roles, which really changes the way that you work with Discord because you can have like roles that have different permissions based on different channels, and you can have like some roles that can send messages but not delete or edit them, and you can have like people who can enter voice and people who can't enter voice and all this kind of granularity that's really, really interesting for community stuff, which leads into this kind of like area that you're talking about where whilst it has a very granular permission system, it is not necessarily as granular as you'd like to say. And so you have to get around that bot a little bit. Okay, so that's super interesting. So that gave you, it's also interesting because like pinning messages doesn't strike me as an activity you do all that often when you're managing a community. Like you probably like on what cadence, like what kind of things were you pinning so often that you needed the bot to do it?
So basically we create roles for each of the pods, and the pods are about 10 students, and a mentor deals with 2 pods over the summer. So they would have, and we did it in cool numbering as well. So we had like, I think it was 12 pods in total. And then we had categories for them. So in Discord, you can have a category and then give them a bunch of pods, and you can make that category have its own permissions. Sure. And so we let the mentors create like hackathon teams and all these different things. And we found that the fellows, when they had like these channels of like 2 or 3 people where they were just, literally just projects, like I'm working, this is the React for these 3 people, and they want to be able to like, they're talking in there, but they want to be able to keep messages pinned and stuff. And it's because Discord doesn't have threads like Slack where you can kind of like have a conversation, but it doesn't like clutter up the entire channel. It's very easy for links to just disappear. So I ended up having quite a lot of them being like, oh, Will, could you pin this for me? Could you pin that? And I had Swift go, can we like enable pinning for them? And I looked into it and went, no, but this is a very simple problem. And like, this will take like half an hour to write a bot for. So it seems kind of overkill to write an entire bot for it. But because
which is a point we will circle back around to in a moment about architectures. But yes, please go on.
So basically, it was mostly for the chat, like these very small channels, which are mostly just like kind of DMs, really. But where I could see everything, and basically people would at me and be like, "Well, can you like do this thing for us?" Right. I have most of it on mute because honestly, that Discord server is insane. It's like 100 channels in it or something. But
it's a very big Discord server.
But yeah, basically people just wanted to pin. The Explorer programs only started for like 2 weeks now, and I've already had people be like, "Oh, how can we pin stuff?" And I'm like, no, glad this bot was made because so it seems like a very simple kind of it's one of those things where it's like, why would people need to pin stuff? Normally, probably not, but because they would be making their own kind of channel separately. Like at a hackathon, you might make it like used to make Discord DMs with my friends, and we would just like message in like a little DM group chat or something. Sure. Whereas like, you know, if you're running a community, it's not often that you'd like make your own channels in them, and that's kind of where the pinning was quite useful.
Right. Cool. Okay, awesome. Brad, so yeah, I wanted to. So you started off with pins. I know at some point as well there was something, and this might have been for the hackathon stuff in the fellowship, but you were working on one of the other interesting things about Discord. So Discord versus Slack has a very interesting model of like servers and users. So rather than Slack, where you create a new user every time you sign up for a workspace, Discord, you have your user and you join servers. And after that, there's not a lot that happens. Like servers have invite links and they can add you to servers. And up until very recently, that was basically all there was to joining. Like there was no way for a server administrator to, like, for example, make you go through a code of conduct or make you do these kind of things. Now there is like welcome screens, and there's the capability to like lock people to a certain channel for a certain amount of time. And I know at some point that there was like a bot going around that was doing something like that, where you had to agree to the code of conduct. Was that, am I thinking of the right thing? Did you really in this? Yeah, cool.
So we did a lot of this for Hack Quarantine because our Discord server had 3,500 people in it over like 3 weeks. It grew very quickly. And so there's a Discord bot that's actually verified by Discord called Zero, and it lets you do lots of things with reactions. So reactions are a really good way to basically create buttons on your messages if you want to be able to have people just easily tap a button and they get access. So we did it for Hack Quarantine in a number of ways. The first one was for mentors. So we had a role for each language or framework and an emoji for each of those, because Discord lets you upload your own emojis. Then we let people tap those emojis and it would give them the role. And then the mentoring system was kind of built off this idea that if you needed a mentor in Java, you just @mentor Java, and then everyone who's opted in to be a Java mentor gets a little ping. And it actually worked really quite well, because it meant that this massive Discord server, you had a way to be able to get in touch with people who knew what they were talking about, because it's very difficult to know out of 3,500 people who's going to know the answer to your question. But this definitely helped kind of like narrow that down a little bit. So yeah, zero.gg, I just see you put it in the chat. It's really nice Discord bot. And we were using another one called MEE6, which lets you do like custom commands where a user can type like the MOH like community server used to use like !accept, and people could like do that to get the role. But it causes this just one channel to get super spammy. And if they type it incorrectly, they get very confused if English isn't their first language and stuff. And so you just get a lot of issues where having to type out a command doesn't work very well. So Jack and I actually convinced MOH to change it to Zero. We gave them like a quick demo and they were like, oh, wow, this is like immediately better, because all you got to do is press this one button and you're in. You haven't got to like try work out what to do. So, and I recently
like, sorry to interrupt, though. There's just like an interesting thing here as well, where you're kind of seeing this in like zero.gg, for example. One of the things when I first started doing developer relationship stuff on Discord that I found was really interesting was, so Discord has recently very publicly kind of like dropped their gamer branding and moved into like, hey, we're about communities, and that's what we're about. And gaming is one of the, like, a subset of communities that we service. But now we're not just about gaming. But it was really interesting doing like a comparison of Discord as a developer ecosystem to things like Slack, because like Slack, you can find like very abstract kind of high level like tools built around anything you could want to do, whereas Discord was like all very specifically built thing like gamer functionality. And it was when I was trying to like put together like a reasonable working Discord for a non-gaming community, I was constantly like having to repurpose weirdly branded gaming tools to try and get to where I wanted to be. which I guess like comes into some of these problems that you have with things like Me6, that like they're actually not really built for the kind of like what we consider community management or the needs of like developer communities. They're built for a very different kind of community that operates in very different ways.
Yeah. That's a really interesting point, actually. So yeah, when quarantine hit, lots of people started using Discord because it was a really good way to, you know, talk with your friends and stuff. But having this gaming brand definitely does, like, you know, doesn't make it very inclusive to other communities, where it would be a really good tool for it, but it doesn't seem it. And I actually really like their new branding. I think it's a really good step in the right direction to making Discord a very powerful platform that can do more things. And I was actually talking to my mum about this. She works in a hospital, and she works with this group of older people where they needed like a way. She was like describing me the problem, and I'm like, this sounds really dumb, but like Discord sounds perfect for it. And which I don't know if they were allowed to use it in a hospital setting because of like
I cannot imagine the NHS, the UK Health Service adopting Discord.
No, I can't really either. But she was looking at it and she's like, if only we could, because this is like perfect, because I can like have the different channels and like I can, you know, control the permissions, because Discord has really nice permissions compared to something like Slack, where it's a little bit more open, or it's either like really locked down or really open, whereas Discord lets you really, you know, break things down to exactly how you want it. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Cool. So I want to circle around to a couple of things. So we've spoken kind of how you got into this whole community and came to be involved with MLH and came to be helping folks via the MLH Fellowship. And you're kind of interested in writing Discord bots. So as folks know, we're here to help with Hacktoberfest. You may also know that Hacktoberfest had a little bit of a rockier than usual start this time around. So a lot of the questions we've had have been very high level things like, how do I get started with open source? How do I find a first pull request? How do I make sure that my pull request is welcomed by the maintainers, has been a really big thing, because the reaction from maintainers has not been as positive as we maybe would like it to be this year round for reasons that they can't be blamed for. So I wanted to kind of get your opinion as someone who's very recently not only entered open source like yourself, but is also seeing so many young and new developers enter it kind of at scale through the program. Like, how was your open source journey, I guess, first of all? What was the first project that you contributed to or got involved in?
So I've never really been involved in super large open source projects. I've used a number of them, and my housemate is very big into Linux and open source, so I get to hear a lot of it from him. But you know, I've like kind of maintained my own very small project for like my group of friends, where they will like add a feature and stuff, and we'll kind of work on it together. And we use it mostly as a learning experience to learn how to, you know, do pull requests better, you know, branching, merging, all that kind of fun stuff that Git has.
Sounds awesome.
So that's kind of like where I kind of got involved. And then doing Hack Quarantine, we learned a lot because we have a website where it's really important that we do not merge things into master, because it was a GitHub Pages site. Because they will go live to, I think the website had like nearly 500,000 hits. So it's like quite important to like make sure that the website, one, doesn't break when you merge something, and two, make sure it's not displaying weird things or incorrect information. So, you know, I learned about branch permissions and, you know, forcing it so that, someone else has to review it before it gets merged, and all of this kind of stuff that a lot of big open source projects use all the time, but was very new to me. So I suppose Hack Quarantine was kind of my kind of entry into this open source world, which just kind of like got the fellowship kind of just exploded a little bit for me.
Yeah, which is, it's a great entry. Like it's, I think, and it's again, something we've actually accidentally touched on multiple times today, that sometimes the best way to get involved with communal software writing is to be scratching your own itch, rather than there's a lot of friction that people have had this month in particular, I think, has come from going out and finding projects they're not already involved with to contribute to, which is fine and good and can be useful. But when it's coming from need, like when you know the need and the use case of this software, that's obviously very useful. So from those experiences, what tips would you have for new contributors to things? How would you go about finding a new project now and contributing to it?
My top tip of advice, especially seeing some of the fellows. So when the fellows started, a lot of them found it very overwhelming to go from never using open source to, you know, being like involved in like, like being told like they're going to work on React. They're like, where do I even start with a code base like React? My advice for people just wanting to get started, don't jump into something like React straight away. go for a smaller project, something that maybe you're more familiar with language wise. Like I'm a Python developer at heart, so I'd probably most likely go and find a smaller Python thing. Maybe that's something with your friends. Maybe you've got some friends from hackathons. Maybe you could add a feature to a project they've done where you're having to understand the kind of stuff that is going on there. And then you write a pull request that kind of explains what's going on. But so something interesting my housemate actually said to me the other day was, a lot of websites are open source on GitHub, and websites are actually quite difficult to, contribute to, because it's not like you don't really add features to a website. It's more about content, and it can be a bit opinionated sometimes. It's not a matter of, is this right or wrong? It's like, it very much depends on what the company's going for, and you may not know that. It's difficult. You may think it's a really good idea and it may get shut down, and it's difficult to know if your contribution is going to be the right sort of thing they're looking for. So I would definitely aim for something more like tools or kind of things that you've worked on, because to say that you help build something that you use often is pretty cool. Like, I know a lot of people use Flask when they're getting started with Python, so maybe adding a small thing to Flask would be pretty cool. Now,
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you may be wondering, like, where do I start with Flask? There's so much to it, and there's a few things that I've kind of learned recently that I think is very valuable to share. The thing that we encourage the fellows to do when they start is looking for smaller issues. So there'll be some issues where it's like, oh, there's this like very tiny bug. It happens like once in a blue moon, but it's still there. Right. And so it's a really tiny thing. It only requires like, a little change, but it's still something that needs getting done, and just because you're doing it versus like a really experienced maintainer's doing it doesn't matter. It's still helpful to the project. And so starting with something like that, where it doesn't require you to understand the entire project, you just need to understand that little scope for that issue, is a really kind of good way, because some people get very overwhelmed when they're told, okay, you're going to contribute to React now. And they think they need to understand the entirety of the React code base, which is just not the case. Right, that would be a bit of you'd spend 12 weeks understanding the entire React code base.
I think 12 weeks is optimistic even.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's quite important to kind of like, you don't need to necessarily understand the entire scope of the project. And, there's definitely a lot of smaller issues. And one of the ones that I know is quite important, and I'm actually planning to make a pull request maybe over the weekend to Discord PY, is documentation is very much important. Now, I don't mean like adding like a full stop to the end of a sentence. I mean, like, a good example for Discord PY, in case someone wants to get there before me, is the Discord API. When you set a status for a bot,
should we bring the project up? Would that be useful?
Yeah.
Cool. Try add your screen.
Yeah. So
let me know when you're ready for that.
Yeah, well, if you want to bring it up, I've got this Discord window open. Okay, cool. So this is the MLH Fellowship Discord. And as you can see at the side here, we have these different, you can see it says here like these different statuses. I've got one here that says I'm currently live. And basically you can set these. Now, one of the cool things is you can set it to say it's streaming, and there's like a Twitch integration with Discord. But it doesn't tell you in the docs that when you give it a URL, it has to be a Twitch one. So I spent ages trying to give it Zoom ones, thinking it would give you a nice like watch now button, and you could just join our fellowship sessions with a watch button. But it just says add the URL. And then I found through a GitHub issue somewhere where the maintainer mentioned that it only accepts Twitch URLs. I'm like, well, that'd be really helpful to have in the documentation.
Wait, so this is in Discord.py?
Yeah,
why does Discord.py have like is there a Discord Twitch integration I wasn't aware of?
Oh yeah, as in like if I started streaming onto Twitch, it will say my status is streaming.
Oh, I see. Got you. But that literally only accepts Twitch as like one of the.
Yeah, so the documentation doesn't mention that it only accepts Twitch, and it's not Discord PY's fault. It's the Discord API, but it would be useful for me when I was going through and I was trying to add this cool little feature to say streaming this, and it kind of makes it look a little bit more exciting. I spent ages going, it's not throwing any errors, but it's just not doing what I wanted to do. And then after a bit of digging, I found in the GitHub issues that it doesn't accept things that aren't Twitch URLs. So I feel like adding that would be quite useful for when someone like me comes along and goes, why doesn't that work? Having a little disclaimer being like, this only works with Twitch URLs would be super helpful. And again, that's just a small contribution, but like if you'd done that before I came along, I'd be very grateful.
That's one of the things that, again, like has been a big focal point this year is people being upset at small contributions, especially ones that are based on documentation or README contents. But I saw a take earlier on Twitter that I think is really poignant, which is like a one character typo fix in the README can be the difference between a command, like a shell command that works and one that doesn't, right? And so I think it's important that, like, although yes, there is some spam in some places, and yes, like there could be trivial documentation changes, it's important that we don't get too caught up in disparaging all documentation changes and recognizing that they're a really great place to start. And we actually had several guests already on the show who have had their start in open source through documentation changes. So while we've got you on screen, you've got a bot you could walk us through, because I would love to get into code of y'all.
One thing I do want to mention about the documentation was my old laptop had a fingerprint scanner, and I was trying to run Linux, and there's the Linux trying to work with fingerprint scanners is a bit of a gray area. And I was trying to go through the documentation of this GitHub repo, and they'd actually spelt the command wrong. And I spent ages trying to work out why the command wasn't working. And then I like just opened my eyes and was like, oh, they've just put the letters the wrong way around. So I was like, oh, quick, I'll fix that, because like, it's easily done. Typos like that. Yeah, you assume the instructions. If you're something wrong with you, not the instructions. But
for sure,
that sort of thing's kind of beneficial.
Yeah. There's a couple of things I wanted to. So there's a couple of reasons I want to do this. So viewers, if you're watching and you're looking for your first contribution, one of my a long-held belief I've always had is that there's a couple of areas for Hacktoberfest that are really easy contribution fodder. Some of them are SDKs and APIs. Like, there are always APIs out there that need an SDK in like a new language, or that have an SDK in a language that's like underserved. And another area that I've very recently come into thinking is like a super friendly way to learn code, and especially open source in general, is contributing to bots, because the bots, like, they someone raised a really good point earlier. Oh, it was yesterday with Swift and John and John on yesterday's show, actually, when they were talking about Rails, about how you can have a Rails app and it's very easy to hand it off between people to person to person because the convention is so strong. And I feel like bots are another great example of that, because there's only so many bot patterns. They're all response and reply. They look for a message and then they reply. And a lot of the Discord APIs especially are really good. Sorry, someone in chat just said apologize because they were going to test something out and then instantly got themselves banned. Congratulations, Mark. I hope your test was successful. Thank you, ModBot. Speaking of ModBots, so I think I wanted to talk. I was really excited to talk bots with you today, because I think they are a really great way for a lot of people to get their first contributions. I don't know where it'd be a good place to start with that.
So, disclaimer: the Discord bots I write are normally very simple. They aren't very complex.
Better, right?
And for open source, that makes it very easy for people to contribute to. Now, I normally separate all my bots as separate bots, because with the Discord API changing and breaking changes it's quite difficult to test one. It's difficult to like write a testing suite. That's something that me and my friend Dan have been trying to like work out, if we could do like nice unit testing that isn't vile to write. Because what we actually do, if I just go over to my test server, it's just me just spamming this bot. Like,
this is everyone Discord has a channel that's just full of bot spam.
Yeah, we call this the bot graveyard. You can see the number of bots at the side. And this is not all of them. I now just use this generic token for all of them rather than adding the new bot. So it means that it doesn't like spam both servers. But yeah, it's like very, it's just me spamming it, because it's difficult to test until you do it. And another thing that's difficult with this bot is it's time-based. So I can test like command-based, but sometimes I don't know if it's going to read the time correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And
but this, again, to get onto that thing of like bots are very accessible thing to contribute to. It's very easy to see the results of what you're doing in Discord.
Oh, well, this is a good example, actually. So I'm going to show you a very quick example of Pinbot, because it's a beautiful bit of code. If I do say so myself. So on Discord, you can copy a message link. And the really interesting thing, my keyboard's being really laggy. It's probably because my desktop is miles away and Bluetooth is not that great. But you'll see there's a number of different things going on here in the URL. Right. Now, Discord uses these things called snowflakes, which is kind of a cool way of doing IDs. Just think of these as unique IDs.
Sure.
And
snowflakes, got it.
The first one here is the actual guild, as the API calls it, or the server, as normies call it.
Again, gaming legacy.
Yeah. So if I right click here, I can copy the ID, and if I paste that in, it will be the same. So it sorts everything by
sorry to interrupt, that to have that copy ID menu, you need to have developer mode turned on in settings.
Yes.
Right?
So you can turn developer mode on by going into settings, and under appearance, I think you can get it on. So it does things by guild, then by channel, I believe it is, and then by message ID. So like this channel here, if I do copy ID. Also, for any of the fellows watching, yeah, this is what the server looks like when you're an admin. So
behind the curtain.
Exactly.
For any non-fellows watching, this is what a Discord server looks like if you're an admin.
Exactly. So yeah, being an admin means I get to see everything, whether I like it or not.
Right.
So here's the channel ID, and then the message is this one. If I right click on that, I can get that. And so that's kind of how it separates things. It's just these kind of unique things for each of them. And what I need to pin the message is I literally just need the ID of it. But it's a bit unreasonable for me to ask fellows to copy the ID when they're not.
ID and post it in, right?
It's not very, human. It's not very friendly if you're not familiar with it. So this bot is very simple. All I do is just type. So you basically, when you're building a bot, you set a command, like the thing it's going to look for. And if I type /, that's what I set this one to. I generally avoid using very common things like that because multiple bots might use them, and then it kind of causes issue.
Yeah. I remember whenever one of the first things that everyone does when they write a Discord bot is add a help command or something like that, and then in every test channel ever, you type help, and just 50 bots go like, "Hey, here's the menu."
Yes, you get bots where they like fight with each other, and you don't want that. So the only reason I kept it as / was because it's like /pin /unpin. Right. But if I do /help here, you can see there's two commands. It's very simple: pin and unpin. So if I do pin and we'll grab the ID of this message, the link. And what it does is it just looks for, it like splits the URL. So it just gets it in chunks, and then it just looks for this last ID. So it is very easy to break, but I couldn't think of a better way to quickly, this is the thing, half the stuff I've made for the fellowship, hope fellows aren't listening, is half of it is basically very quick things I wrote to solve a problem. Fellows, you could probably, this is a great opportunity. If you want to make pull requests to make my code less miserable, then I'm more than welcome for it. I've had a few fellows make pull requests when they're like, I don't like how this is done.
Yeah.
And it's like, I will more than happy have some contributions to make the experience for everyone better. So if I type /pin, it pins a message to the channel, and I can see the /help there. Same as unpin. I can do the same. And yeah, I keep the bots separate. So if this one, for example, falls over because of some dodgy code or something, or the API decides to change and doesn't allow that thing anymore, it doesn't cause the other ones to break. So that's the pin bot. It's very simple. It doesn't do a lot, but it gets used a fair amount. And if I just jump over into the code very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So they're all under the fellowship, MLH fellowship organization. So if you're interested in, contributing to some of the fellowship bots, which I'm more than happy for you to do if you're interested in adding some extra features.
There we go.
So here's the fellowship Discord, not Discord, GitHub, same thing. So we've got the pin bot here. These are all just bots I've written. And here it is a little bit overcomplicated because I use this also as an opportunity for me to learn how to use Docker. So my friend and I he gave me like a crash course in Docker. But if I just hop into the actual code, I'm not going to explain the Docker to you because I won't be able to.
I need to do that today. We'll do a Docker episode, another one.
Nice. So it's 60 lines of code, and we've got this one method here that does a thing called onReady, which is basically when the bot is actually booted up, connected to the Discord, and everyone's happy, it will do this thing, and that just says to set the activity status, which is the little bit it says like watching underneath. And I just told it what the command is because I had a few fellows going, how do I use the command? And I went, oh yeah, it's probably not the clearest thing in the world. I'll put it in the thing there.
So at this point, I do want to point something out as well, which is really neat. So one of the things, another reason why I really like recommending Discord to people is the Discord API is a bit of a weird one. So typically an API, for those of you, for anyone who is new to all of this in chat, an API, especially when we're talking about a web API, is a way that you interact with some service over the internet, typically via HTTP. There are other ways that APIs exist. For example, other ones, especially real-time applications, will use WebSockets. Discord does both in a way that's always been really unexpected to me. So for example, lots of platforms, if they have the concept of an event, so something happening, they will have a webhook architecture where instead of you sending a request to them, they send a request to you. So GitHub does this, for example, when you, if someone commits to your repository, GitHub will send a webhook to wherever you want it to go. So if you want to receive a request, and like if you're building a bot around GitHub, you can get sent a request from GitHub to say this event has happened. Discord basically has a real time, and I think this is accurate. Will, correct me if I'm wrong. It has a separation basically between real time events and retrieving data. So if you're retrieving data like historical data, you can use the API. Else, you have to use the WebSocket side. So the thing I really like about Discord.js that it looks like Discord.py does is it just makes that completely invisible. You don't have to mess around with the different layers of the Discord API. It just they have their own event handler abstractions built on top, and you get these nice methods.
Yeah. The wrapper is beautiful for this because if you know a little bit of Python, it's very easy to create a bot. Now, this is one of the things I struggled with getting into programming was they teach you in school, you know, how to write command line applications. But for someone who wasn't using the command line then, now it's all I use, but that's another story. You know, I want to be able to build stuff that feels relevant to me. And as someone who uses Discord a lot to talk to my friends, especially from sixth form, you know, being able to build applications that, you know, help make that experience better feels really cool to me. Right. I don't want to be building code that doesn't matter to me. So Discord was a really good way. And I imagine a lot of you out there who do use Discord for playing games with your friends or communities and so on. It's another really cool way to add a very simple thing that doesn't do a lot, but you know, it feels really good. You know, it gives you that kind of, and that's what I learned from building FoodFlex back 2 years ago.
Yeah. I have the exact same thing. I have a Discord server that's got a bunch of friends who are like code adjacent or are trying to get more into code. And we have a completely goofy Discord bot that doesn't really do much useful, but every now and then someone goes in there and adds some stuff to it. And it's just like a nice thing. We all have nice little communal projects that we all just kind of add on.
I've got a fun bot for you that I built for the fellows that I'll show in a little bit.
Cool. So anyway, I've completely derailed you explaining this bot.
So we've got this one method here called get message. And what it does is it checks to see if it's a Discord URL. The validation here could definitely be better. And if you want to make a contribution to make this validation better, I am all for it. It just checks if it's a Discord link, and then it just grabs the last bit from it when it splits it by slashes. Again, pretty easy to break, and people do break it fairly often, but you know, it works 99% of the time. And then we got these two methods here, which are called pin. And that's one of the things I love about this API is the use of decorators here, which are these little @ symbols on top. Make it a decorator basically just wraps this function in additional functionality, but as Joe said, it extracts everything away from you, so you can focus on the logic of your program and not trying to work out how the Discord API works. Right. So all I have to do here is just say this is a command, and then it gives it the description here. So if I went into Discord and type /help pin, it would say pin a message, argument URL of the message, sort of thing, and it just checks if the message is already pinned, and if it is, it will just say that it's already pinned. But it gets the message down here. Using the ID, and then it just basically tries to send a message saying it's pinned, and if it isn't, it will pin it. And then if it doesn't do that for whatever reason, it will just say something went wrong. Make sure that the URL is correct. Again, not very much code at all here, but it does the job. And you know, that's very human readable, and that's what I like about code like this is you can step through that like pseudocode. You know, it's not complicated.
For sure.
And again, the unpin is the same.
Another great example of another reason why these bots can be a really great place to start is because like adding new functionality is like very clean, right? Like you find the event you want to hook into, and different projects will shape this in different ways. Do you have any projects that have like a clear any Discord bots that have like a plugin type architecture, or like a separation, or like an easy way to add new functionality? If you know what I mean. If you don't on the hand, there's no point. It's no worries. I can talk abstractly. But a lot of them have like a way you can easily write like a simple self-contained like file that gets loaded as a module. So it's very easy to throw new functionality into it. So
yeah, for sure. So there's one other bot I wanted to talk about was so the main Discord bot we haven't actually talked about whatsoever, and this is the one that like keeps me up at night, and is from what I can tell looking at the Discord server has broken. I knew that there was a bug. I don't know what the bug is yet. There you go. Open if you want to go and contribute and fix the bug for me, I would very much appreciate that. So some of you have heard of XKCD. Now I'm going to just bring up the XKCD website. Now these are comics normally around programming, and they're normally quite funny, very relatable sometimes. And some of the fellows had never heard of XKCD, and I thought this is a wonderful opportunity to educate them on good programmer humor. So I built a Discord bot that initially would scrape this page and get this image URL, and then would post it in Discord with a command. Very nice and simple. And then my housemate told me that they have an API, and I felt sad that I had just gone through the effort of trying to web scrape the website. And he's like,
XKDC itself has an API?
yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, if I go back, if I just like search XKCD on my keyboard on XKCD without the .com. So I'm a Mac user and I'm using Windows because OBS Virtual Webcam works like way better in Windows. And it means I can't type.
I'm very familiar with that problem. If anyone has no idea what we just said, this was like streamer nonsense. There's a tool that lots of people use to stream called Open Broadcast Studio. It has a plugin called Virtual Cam, which is actually what I'm using right now. See this. I'm not. You may be surprised to hear that I'm not in the middle of a canal right now. This is a green screen. It's coming through OBS. I've got this broadcast studio open. It's doing my green screen, and I'm then sending that to my webcam output via Virtual Cam. It only works on Windows. It didn't work on Mac. The CEO of Shopify basically screamed into the internet and said, "I will give someone $15,000 if they build this." And someone did, and it's getting there, but it is still very frustrating currently to stream.
OBS actually got it built in natively. It used to be a plugin, but when I updated OBS like earlier this week, it was one of the new built-in features, which is quite exciting.
Absolutely. Okay, cool.
So, but one question for you: do you change the background depending on the time of day?
No, it's the same one all the time.
Because I noticed it looks a little bit more like nighttime, and I wasn't sure if that was because it's nighttime for us now.
No, it's the same one. I need to get some better pictures. That would be clever, but I'm not that prepared. One thing someone did complain about the other day was you may notice that every now and then my arms disappear.
Yeah.
I came on the other day and my microphone was just poking out just a bit, and it was apparently very visually confusing about why half a microphone was floating in the air.
I mean, I have the same issue that so I'm using a mirrorless camera as my webcam currently, and it's 4:3, which means that it doesn't fill the StreamYard thing. It leaves little black bars. But if I put it into a virtual webcam, I can add something in the background. So I've just added Fellowship branding because, and yes, this is real bokeh. This is not any sort of like software trick. Yes, this is real bokeh, and it does look quite nice.
Excellent. Cool. So anyway, you were running us through the spot.
Yes. We love going off topic. So basically, they've got this API where if you just go to this URL, it just gives you this wonderful JSON of stuff to do with a random comic. If I know that's the latest comic, my bad. But if you put a number in the middle, that will give you the comic of that number. So what the Discord bot does is it randomly generates a number between whatever the most newest one is. So it gets the newest one, gets the number of that, which at the moment is 2367. And then picks a random number between that. And then we'll ask the API to get this wonderful JSON, grabs the image URL, which is here under image with the key image, and then just does a GET request on that and sends it in Discord. So if I now share Discord again, screen sharing will be the bane of me. Anyone from the fellowship who's watched me try and do screen sharing, it's just
it's all good. This is the joy of the software we're using today. It makes it very easy. Is that ready to go up?
Yep. So if I type the XK, as you can see, it's up here, watching for comics. This thing just sits on Google Cloud all the time. It's just there. If I type comic, I think it is, sometimes it can take a little time. It just posts a random comic. And I just made this thing for the fellows, and one of the mentors used to just do it every morning when they woke up. So there was like a new comic. But it's just like a cool way to kind of experience a little bit of XKCD. It took me not very long to write because it's not doing a lot, and but it's a cool little bot, and I thought it was a nice little way to, teach people about this cool little comic that I get a little chuck out of every now and then.
Right. That's really great. Awesome. Cool. So another thing I wrote on my magic notebook, which allows me to not interrupt you while you're talking and when I've got something to think about. First of all, we've got a question from Hugh. So with all the Discord what you write in Python, he's got a Python question for you. What's your favorite underappreciated Python feature?
This is a very good thing. Now, last summer when I did an internship at Arm, which company that work on lots of mobile. They design a lot of mobile processors that you would often find in like every mobile phone ever, and every small gadget really. And I was working on these like Python drivers, and I got my. That was like they threw me in the deep end. They were like, "Cool, can you write these Python drivers?" By the way, they're all written in like Python using objects, and I'd never done that in Python. I did it loads in Java at uni, but never in Python. And I had a real appreciation for how Python does object orientation. I know some people don't like it, but it's really easy to just create these quick classes. Just do these very quick things where it just works. It's very, this is the thing I love about Python. You can just very easily throw an idea at it and it will work without having to write lots of code. And some of you may know that I thought I wanted to be a mobile developer. So I spent a long time learning Android apps, writing Java. And after writing Python, I just can't handle the boilerplate. There is just, you know, I don't like having to write like hundreds and hundreds of lines of code just to get like a button to work. Anyone who's gone to my Android workshops will know that I have to like script all the code because there's so much to write just to get it to do a basic guessing game.
There's a game, there's a name I recognize in chat. Kushdols, I'm sure you sympathize deeply with what we're saying right now. But yeah, sorry, go on.
It's so the object orientatedness of Python is something I really like, and I feel like more things could use it. Maybe that's just because like half the time whenever I use Python doesn't really need it, but recently I actually got a Stream Deck as basically a big macro button on my desk, and I wanted to allow my fan on my desk. Yes,
what a Stream Deck is.
My cable won't reach that much.
It's a little grid of programmable buttons, basically.
Yeah, and the really nice thing is they have screens underneath, so you can get it to display information as well. And I wanted to be able to turn my smart plugs on and off, but there's no TP-Link thing. You can do it with IFTTT, but the way they want me to do it, they only allows me to do 3, and I'd need 4 because I'd have 2 smart plugs, and they need an on state and an off state. And I'm like, I'm not paying to turn my smart plugs on with a button. I can build my own solution. So I made this very basic thing in Fast API, which was my first time using Fast API. Very nice and clean, actually. And it basically just uses this Python library for TP-Link Casa. And when I press the button, it just triggers the fan. And I actually rewrote it yesterday so that it now toggles. If I press it, it will check what its state is and does the opposite. I basically extended the smart plug class to add these extra features I wanted, which was checking the state, turning it off and on again without having to call a few methods. And it just felt clean, and it's just simple, and I just like how it looks. I think that's probably the thing I like about Python. Maybe it's a bit of a boring answer because I know some people are really into their generators and their what's it called, decorators and all stuff like that. But it's keeping it simple.
Yeah, I hope that answered your question, Hugh. So the other thing I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned that you've had some fellows do pull requests to the bot and that kind of thing. So I wanted to ask you, as someone who has accepted a pull request to one of your projects, what do you look for in a good pull request? When you're reviewing that pull request, what does that look like to you?
Interesting. So basically something that the pull requests I generally kind of do, especially when I feel like some kind of like community websites and stuff, is I would love it if you could explain to me what is going on here so I don't have to dig through your code and understand, because everyone writes code slightly differently, and it's very easy for you to write a load of code and think it's very easy to understand, but it can take quite a lot of time for someone else to understand it. And a maintainer needs some of the maintainers will be, I don't want to say like, oh, I will not merge your thing. I need a reason. I need you to give me a kind of a reason as to what this does and why I should merge it in the kind of nicest way possible. So if you're going to make a pull request, I like kind of encouraging people to kind of like add a screenshot, maybe, kind of add a little bit of text explaining what they changed. Something I like to do with basic pull requests on like private repos that no one can see when I'm doing it with a few people is I'll just put like a header of changes and I'll just list out the things I changed, whether they're like adding or removing things, just so that it's clear that when people go through the code, especially if you're doing a few things in a pull request, like they're small things, but they all add up. It's very easy to understand why all of a sudden 30 lines of code changed without having to like understand it. And something else that I like doing, this is more from a maintainer point of view, is adding like basic CI and stuff to like test it. So something I like doing is adding Netlify like deploy previews to website repos, because then I can see it without having to go and run the code manually, what's going on. So I can see when they do it and they create maybe a draft PR, it will build it on Netlify. I can see what it looks like. And then, I can merge it with confidence, knowing that actually it does do what it was.
Yeah. My other favorite version of that feature is Heroku do a really good version of that. So Heroku, so again, for people who don't know what either of these are, Netlify is a site hosting tool, static site hosting tool, super useful if you want to get a website up quickly. And Heroku is kind of like before the current generation of cloud computing. There was a very easy kind of automatic scaling cloud solution called Heroku. That is all based on Git, so you Git push to it, and it just kind of does the thing, and like it detects what your code is and builds it. They have like very opinionated container architecture essentially. So when you push something to it, it like runs in their own custom container thing. But they have I can't remember what they call it. Dynos. There we go. It runs on a dyno. But they have review. Do I call it review branches? Review something like that. But yeah, very similar idea. But like, it comes up in GitHub as like, hey, you've got this pull request. We'll deploy that for you, and it's great because like Netlify, you get to see it straight away. But it works for like anything that runs on the web. You get that deploy preview of it. So yeah, cool. That's
Discord bots and that kind of stuff. If you're interested in actually trying stuff like that, this is me doing my fellowship, Natural Talking. If you're a student, the GitHub Student Developer Pack has access to all of these wonderful things, like access to like lots of Heroku stuff, other cloud platforms and stuff. And I like strongly encourage to like, especially during Hacktoberfest, to like go and try these things, see what they're like, because I learned how to use Google Cloud by throwing Discord bots at it and hoping it worked. Half the time it didn't like me very much, but I learned a lot in the process, So
yeah, absolutely. And if you're not a student, there's a very easy way to kind of get some of these experiences, which is baked into GitHub, is a product called GitHub Actions, which allows you to do CI, allows you to do deploys, allows you to build bots with GitHub, all kinds of wild things. And any GitHub account now gets like 2,000 free minutes or something. So you can play with a lot of these concepts right from within any GitHub.
Well, I've actually used it on one of all the fellowship bots. Actually, I'll quickly show you with screen share.
Let me add this up. Here we go.
So Pinbot is very overbuilt for a thing that literally is like 60 lines of Python code, which started off as 30. You'll see there's a GitHub folder here with a thing called workflows, and this is GitHub Actions. Now, the only bot that's not on Google Cloud is the Session bot, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Everything else is running. Session bot's running on a Raspberry Pi over on the floor over there.
Right.
There's a reason behind that. Just go with it. Now, this Discord bot is awesome. So I have a GitHub action that basically tries to put it in a Docker container. It's just the default one that like is on the GitHub Actions page. And I've got this other one, which is called the GCE, which deploys the Discord bot container to a Google Compute Engine instance, which for those of you who don't know is basically just a virtual machine in Google Cloud, but it's container optimized. And basically this horrific looking code, I don't understand it. Well, I do understand it now after looking at it so much, but I didn't understand it when I first used it. But I found this wonderful thing on the Google Cloud, like in GitHub organization, that was like, this will be used to run it. And basically it like deploys it. You can kind of see the different bits here.
It's a YAML file format. It's not quite, I mean, there's code in there, but it's mostly a list of fields in this like configuration file. And the configuration files are, as of last week, much better documented. But one of the neat things there, if you look at, say, line, it's very small for me. Let me full screen that. No, it's my fault because I've got my stream set up. So line 37 is a great one. So you see you've got above that you've got run and you've got name. So name is, so how this works is this YAML file is a series of steps that GitHub Actions will execute one after the other. And so where you've got that run, what run is in one of these YAML files on line 36 is it just says, hey, the next line or whatever is going to be just a straight up shell command, and I want you to run this in the virtual environment that we've created for GitHub Actions. So one of the really nice things about this is like, yes, you've got all this YAML dressing around it, but really all you're actually doing is running shell commands on essentially a container. So you can do anything that you would normally do, like setting up your own machines or setting up like the development environment that you run your code in. You can just throw shell commands in there. And so there is like other versions of Actions that are JavaScript, or I think you can use Docker files as well. But at its most simple, you can just like throw some shell in some YAML and it will work.
So like you can see here where it says like this is called build, this is called publish, this is called deploy. It's broken into these separate steps. Now, if I hop over to the GitHub Actions tab, and this is how I learned how to use GitHub Actions, was by just poking around with some of these pre-built YAML files. I feel that's how most of us learn. But I can click on this and it will show me it doing the different steps. So you can see again, you've got the build here, the deploy, and it tell me like if you were doing it in a terminal. Let me just make that a little bit. Well, that sort of worked. There we go. StreamYard resizes sometimes. But you can see here, it's just as if you were building a Docker container. It's doing the same thing, but in a virtual machine on in the black hole that is GitHub Actions, where you tell it to do things and it runs it somewhere in the cloud. And if you don't go over 2,000 minutes a month, it doesn't charge you. So but yeah, this is basically what it does is it automatically builds my container and then puts it on Google Cloud. So if anyone does actually add any features to this, if I merge them in, it will automatically
just get built.
It just puts it straight up on there. And that's what the little tick here means, is it built correctly, which is really nice. But it is, this is a bit cursed. I'll put it that way. Basically, the Discord bot has quite a few. Actually, this one's not too bad. This one has a .env file, which just has like the Discord token and a few other bits. It might be just the Discord token, to be fair. And so I'm able to easily pass that in as a one secret, which you can put in the GitHub settings, and it will pass it through. So it means you don't commit your secrets, which is not something that you want to do.
And GitHub will actually warn you about now in a lot of cases.
Yeah, if you do that, you'll get an email from, I can't remember the name of the bot, but it'll be like, you don't want to do that.
Token scanner or whatever it's called.
Yeah. Whereas Session Bot is a little bit dodgy, little bit. My friend encouraged me, I'm going to just say, where to use, so because it uses Google Cloud, the Google Calendar API, which we'll talk about a little bit later. What it means is you need this JSON file, which is a service account, which is basically just, normally what you would do is it would prompt you to log into your web browser and like approve it's you and that it knows it's you. And then it would go, okay, well, it's Will. I'm happy for this to it's got access to Google Cloud now. But that's a little bit hard to do when you're using a VM in the cloud and you've just got a terminal. So you can do this thing where you can create a service account, which is basically just kind of like, it's like when you make like a account, like a, what's it called? Where you make like a generated like one-time password sort of thing for passwords, I think is the word I'm looking for. But you do it in like a JSON form. And it's just a bunch of fields. And I was like, how can I give this to GitHub Actions nicely? And basically, I don't recommend this. If someone wants to make this better, again, this is just me like, putting a picture out there for people to make my projects better. But we basically use this horrific. I didn't write this. See, my friend here wrote this, just calling him out there. Basically, it turns the JSON into, it just basically takes the thing and turns it into a JSON with a script that is run. I'm not proud of it, let's put it that way. And then it basically passes it through to it here. I commented this out so that it doesn't run the CI because currently it breaks. This was, again, not the cleanest code in the world. But
there are, especially when you're working with third-party services, there are all kinds of, to use your word, cursed authentication mechanisms and hoops you have to jump. Hugh Rawlinson is in chat, who is someone I know has spent a great deal of his professional career explaining OAuth 2 to people. There are all kinds of terrible ways that you auth APIs, especially APIs that lived within what we shall generously call walled ecosystems, such as Google Calendar, which is an AP is a product built on top of an open standard that they are desperately hoping will cease to be open. Sometimes you have to do some really wild things, and then when those things interact with like GitHub Actions, where your essentially like your configuration and your authentication lives like publicly in a file in your repo rather than like a series of like shell invocations or whatever, that can definitely have some calamitous
for sure
code results. One thing I want to quickly answer, well, actually I'll put it to you. I don't know how much experience with DevOps you have. This is an interesting question that we got. Do you think DevOps is just working with configuration files and not actual development? For a person who's just starting his career, is development better than DevOps?
It really depends. So my housemate is really into DevOps, and me and him have both been we both kind of motivate each other to learn new things. He's definitely way more into the low level side of things than I am, but you hear these buzzwords like Docker and Kubernetes, and my girlfriend actually has just been learning about Kubernetes at her new grad job, and she just complains about having to write YAML all day, every day. It's like so. It definitely sounds sexier than it is. I think a lot of it is writing stuff like YAML files and other configuration files. But it's still really cool. Just because that doesn't mean it's not cool. For example, over the summer last year when I was at ARM, I was working on building this Jenkins pipeline for the team I was working with. And the Jenkins, basically, when the team's working on these different firmwares for these FPGA boards, it would automatically try and run them on the FPGA boards. And so it would come back saying it didn't work and so on. So I built this Jenkins setup to do that. And it was a lot of poking around with Linux and stuff, but I had a really good time because I had, you're having full control of this system and you're automating a lot of stuff. So if you're kind of interested in that kind of side of things, it's really interesting. But if you're more interested in kind of like building things and developing new features and that sort of side of things, might not be the sort of thing for you. But the only way, in my opinion, to find out is by giving it a go. So
one thing I would say directly to this question is like, is it just configuration files? There's no code. That I definitely don't necessarily think is true a lot anymore. And you see a lot of companies have this separation between like app engineering and other factors. So like app engineering, like to get to your last point, is like very much where you get into that, like, hey, I'm building features on the product, right? But there's lots of places in the infrastructure that project runs on where you really bleed into where you start to bleed into what are DevOps disciplines, but you're still writing code every day. So a great example of this actually is, and this is something common to many companies, many companies will have like their own container orchestration or like deployment solution built on top of or around Kubernetes. So like at GitHub, there was one of these, and it was built and maintained by the SRE team, by the folks who did DevOps for GitHub, and it was in itself a really cool thing that like required a lot of code and was a product and had some really smart people writing code on it every day, and it wasn't a product aimed at consumers of GitHub service, but they were writing features for a user base. So I would definitely say that you're not guaranteed to just be writing YAML files if you go into DevOps. There is a lot of infrastructure as code, I think, is the buzzword.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose it really depends on kind of the different things you're working on, but
and the stack of the company, of course.
Yeah, but if it's, I think it's difficult to say is DevOps right. There's a lot of different kind of types of DevOps. And also, like, is DevOps better than development, or is development better than DevOps? Again, that's like entirely down what's like. There's you said a really interesting thing earlier on in the stream where we were talking about. I think you were mentioning something about liking to work on tools or contribute to tools, and that's like a big part of, I think, like DevOps or like product development. Like some people just get a kick from writing features on consumer things. Some people want to write tools that enable other people to do cool stuff, and both of those are valid, and you will find satisfaction down both paths depending on what kind of things you're into. For sure.
Cool.
So I wanted to talk about very briefly the big bot of the fellowship, the almighty bot.
Sure.
This is Session Bot, and this is the thing that I had far too much fun writing and far too much time crying to put the CI on it. But this Discord bot, so we, for the fellowship, part of my role initially, before I kind of did a little bit of everything, as Swift put it, was organizing talks and speakers, getting some guest speakers in to come do some talks about various different things. So I know, Joe, you came in and spoke about remote working. We had a number of people talk about different like introductions to GraphQL, web development, Docker. You know, if there was a talk on a topic, it happened probably. And there was a lot of different steps to this pipeline. And so one of them is obviously, making announcements beforehand. And when I'm busy trying to talk with the guest and get them set up, making sure they're happy with Zoom, it's quite difficult to make sure I make a nice fulfilled announcement that looks pretty, that isn't just a big wall of text. Now, those of you who've heard me talk about it, I hate it when it's just a big wall of text. Anti-wall of text, make it visual, add an image, make it a bit different, make it stand out. Making announcements just a big like paragraph of text, I'm not going to read that. It's not interesting to me. So you got to make it catching and engaging. So I wanted to make these Discord announcements better. And I also wanted to make sure that the ones that were happening in the night when I was, asleep, for stuff like local host workshops that MLH do, were, still happening, because I don't want the fellows in different time zones to suffer just because I'm not awake. That's not fair on them.
For sure.
So I built this Discord bot called Session Bot. And what it does is we have a Google Calendar, which the fellows can add, and I shared between all of the MLHs. And basically, when people book a slot on Calendly, which is a tool used for booking, you basically can find time in someone else's calendar. It puts it in this Google Calendar. And it asks you a bunch of questions when you fill it out, like, what is the name of your session? Could you give us a brief description? Just various questions like that. I wrote the Discord bot so that it would automatically look for these things in the calendar description, and they would be able to make a fancy looking announcement based on that. I added a few extra fields like a thumbnail where you can add a custom thumbnail, as well as also adding like the speaker. So I'm going to actually screen share onto Discord if I can find it. I know that's when you'll panic on, I need to find the button to allow Will to screen share.
Yeah, I'm currently between two screens. I'm making sure that our people in chat who are sharing links don't get banned, whilst also having you screen share.
So this is me testing it the other day. I will just scroll up. This is me. This is me adding all of the fellowship rules the other day. A bit manual. I think I deleted the channel actually. We'll go down to the right at the bottom.
Sure.
We have this spam one. I think
so just while you're finding that, Hugh jumped in on the conversation we were having about DevOps and shared that the company that he works at does their config in TypeScript rather than YAML because TypeScript is, as it suggests in the name, it is typed. So the when that's built, you can catch errors in that config via the types, which isn't a property of YAML. And then from that TypeScript, their continuous integration generates the YAML. And if you're interested in that, Hugh has shared some links to that in the chat.
There you go. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about DevOps, I'll definitely have a look at those.
So what have you found where you need to be with the sessions?
Yeah, so basically me cleaning up the fellowship server was a bad idea because now I can't find old things in there. But my test server, the graveyard that it is, has everything I could possibly want. So basically it does two things. Now it does, I've changed it slightly. Because something that I learned, and this is quite important as well if you're a YouTuber or a Twitch streamer, when you make that first announcement, it's really important not to waste it. If you make it like half an hour before you're due to go live, everyone will get that ping on their phones and they'll be, and then they'll click on it and it's just starting soon screen, which is a very common thing. And it's really important to not abuse that. That notification is valuable. And you kind of have the same issue with the fellowship server where I can make an announcement an hour before the event, but like no one cares, right? They can see it in the calendar, but it doesn't affect them at the time. It just makes them go, cool, whatever. And I found it didn't really help. So I try and make the announcements as like close to the time as possible. So I make one at 10 minutes before, which I feel like isn't too far. It was 15, but I've actually shortened it to 10. And then one that's 3 minutes before. So it's like enough time for you to find out how to open Zoom and find the link and stuff. But the idea is that you can pass it a URL for a thumbnail, so it can put a custom one, or it can put a generic fellowship logo up, which is actually just stored at some random GitHub pages thing I put up on the internet. And then if I click on this link here, this will actually open the Zoom link, but that's not very clear to people. So I actually attach it down here as well. This is a Google Calendar link. Normally it's Zoom, so it doesn't actually overflow the screen. But then the last announcement that I make, which might be... Okay, we'll just have to scroll through the graveyard a little bit. Here you go. What it does here is 3 minutes before, it makes a generic announcement where it attaches the link as like just as a message. So it's very clear to people, but it also then embeds the link. So it's very easy for people to see, because I didn't want people going, but I don't know how to click it, because that's not very obvious that that's a link if you're not new to Discord. You just, it looks like if I click the image, it makes it bigger, but you would think maybe that would make it, so I wanted to make it as clear as possible. And then I also tagged the relevant roles. So we had 3 different types of fellows. We had the normal fellows, the Tectonica fellows, and the Tech Talent Pipeline. And fun fact, the Tectonica fellows are graduating right now as we speak. So that is pretty exciting.
That's amazing.
But yeah, this Discord bot basically would sometimes, that's a GitHub link. If we scroll up, this code is not very, here we go. This is a really good example. So it goes, hey, fellows, we have a session in 15 minutes. And it also puts the time. And this is another cool thing, which is where Discord bots talk to Discord bots. And then I get it to basically post in here the little description from the thing where it says, please describe it in 3 to 5 words. But as you can see here, it's not quite working as well. So then it tells people a little description of what to expect. I can add a thumbnail into the calendar description if I want. So I can make it a little bit more catching, for example, for slightly bigger events, or to flex on the own ones that I ran. I can make my own thumbnails. I would love to automate this a little bit. So maybe using Pillow to make one that
images,
has it puts the title, maybe the speaker name, and something like that.
That's also a great idea, says the man who's currently manually generating these lovely lower thirds.
I've just so this Discord bot worked really well, but it does like to fall over quite regularly. And if I go back up to the top, you'll see that Swift was forgetting that I'm on a live stream. But basically I had it here. It doesn't. This is the thing that breaks, and I don't know why. Please, if you can work it out for me, I'd be very grateful. But it puts as the status watching now
contribution.
Exactly. I don't know if it's easy, but but it will say how long's left until the next event. So if you moused over it, it would be like an hour and 2 minutes. So you can always see when the next one is, and it will tell you what the name of it is. So it'll be like startup careers, or in your case, here, there, and everywhere. I think it was called anywhere. It will say that in like 2 hours time, and if I click on it, it will like send me a little bit more detail. So there's a lot of like things I did here to kind of like boost the experience and generally try and make it a little bit more flashy than just this standard server.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I automated this a little bit more this time for the new fellowship, which is what I worked on actually Thursday, Wednesday afternoon. So now when people book on Calendly, it automatically fills out my spreadsheet, which tells me all of the things coming up, which means that when I give it off to other people to go and run sessions for me, because I might be studying, asleep, to be fair, they're the only other things I do outside of fellowship. And eating. I do that too sometimes. But
that's an important precursor to coding.
Exactly. And don't eat and code responsibly. But this I really like this bot. It does a lot of different things, but being able to make these announcements, and I also made it so now it can make these. Hang on, wait. Swift just reacting to these. This is just me spamming it with like. Yeah, this is me spamming it the other day, but this is like me just testing it recently, where I can see the calendar event. I can hear, and it also puts, and this is another thing, it puts reactions underneath, because I find it really helpful. This is more of a this is like community advice I've learned doing fellowship, but maybe it'll be useful to someone. I find it really useful to encourage people to react to the message. Now, I don't want to go to the react, because that just defeats the point. But if people react to it, it helps me understand if it's the sort of thing they're interested in. Because I get very worried when I'm running these talks that no one's going to turn up, and the poor guest speaker who's got all excited and we've managed to get to come along.
Is expecting some kind of audience. And then,
we don't want to waste their time. But it's a bit sad when, you don't get many people. And so I try and like automatically put these reactions from the bot to try and encourage people to click them. And I generally, if I go to the events page, you'll see in here that if I scroll up a little bit, it's just me, Bob Ross, good time. Oh yeah, this Discord bot didn't like the @ symbol in the and symbol for some reason in Google Calendar. But, some people put their own reactions. Here's a good example, lots of reactions here. And it helps me kind of gauge, like, is this actually just spam, or is, because the issue with that before I changed the thumbnails was just the same thing again and again and again, which defeats the point. But yeah, like here, it's got a custom thumbnail. To try and like make it very clear what's going on. But awesome. The next thing that I'll just quickly mention is we had a fellow build this other bot. So there's a bot called FriendTime that you can use. And FriendTime is a bot that does time zone conversion, which is a big thing that Slack does really, really well, but Discord does terribly. So, and as someone who works primarily with a team based in New York, and I'm based in the UK, time zone conversion is now second nature to me. If someone asks me what the time is in like East Coast time, I can convert it in my head, because everyone I talk to is based in East Coast. So we built a Discord bot to try and tackle the issue of time zones, because we have so many of them spread over the fellowship. And but FriendTime has one issue: it doesn't allow bots to talk to it. And the way the FriendTime works is, if I was to message, actually I'll do it in the admin channel because I don't then confuse fellows of why I'm messaging. If I type like a time like when my keyboard wakes up, like 12 p.m.
Bluetooth keyboard problems.
I know, right? If I type 12 p.m., right, the Discord bot would then catch that, and it would know that, because you have to like set a command to say what your time zone is. It would then give people a little reaction. If they tap that reaction button, it will then DM them, telling them, oh, by the way, this is what the time would be for you. This is currently in this. And it's really helpful. But people were like, can we get this integrated into the event bot? Because I don't know why, to be honest, because it says like it's in. I never put the times. I always put like an hour and an hour's time. I kept it relative, because then it's very easy. That's
where I was wondering why you would want this bot to talk to other bots, but you want the time zone bot to be talking to the event bot in this case. So when the event bot posts the time, you want to be able to pick that up from the time zone bot. Okay,
so you can see here, I post the time in GMT, which I actually realize is no, that's fine, because I tell all the code to be in GMT, even though now it's running on a Raspberry Pi that's running in UK time, which is +1 GMT.
Right. Yeah.
But I basically post that here, and then you'll see that FriendTime or TimeBot will react, so people can click on that. I still don't quite understand why the fellows were so keen for it, considering it did things in 15 minutes and 3-minute intervals. I feel like,
well, to be fair, on that perspective, like a lot of the fellows, there's a lot of fellows, as you said, from many time zones, but there is also quite a lot of fellows from India who have to deal with being on a half an hour time zone. So for them, even those increments, it's probably when you're on a half an hour time zone, you are happy for any support you can get, because half an hour time zones are a nightmare.
Yeah, I definitely noticed with Hack Quarantine, it's like there's parts of New Zealand that are like on a 45-minute, and I'm like, why? Why does that exist?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but the thing is, it may not be useful to me, but if it's useful to the fellows, I'll add it in. Doesn't hurt.
Yeah,
so we added it in, and people liked it. But the issue was Timebot the issue we had with Timebot is I think it was running on Heroku, but Heroku would sleep it after a while, so it would just like stop working after like some time, and require them to manually go poke it. And I never touched it. It got rewritten in Rust for some reason. Again, I let these fellows do what they needed to do.
That is just the catchphrase of software in 2020. It got rewritten in Rust for some reason. It's just,
I just remember waking up and going, but why though? And they were like, because Rust has all these benefits. And I'm like, I'm sure it does. Just don't ask me to maintain it.
It's fun. It's wonderful.
But that is EventBot and Timebot kind of combined. And it was nice to have the fellows kind of help build these Discord bots to help make the experience better.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking on this wonderful bot safari. I feel like we covered a fantastic amount of ground. And what was great as well is not only to get into some bot code, but you, I think, gave a lot of really interesting like bot UI UX things, like the reactions point you made. I think was really great. So if you are out there looking for Hacktoberfest contribution, there is a whole wealth of bots that are always looking for little bits of functionality. You've been shown some bots that may be looking for functionality today, and it's also a lovely little easy thing to write to get some coding done with your friends.
I know that some people earlier were talking about Discord.js. Now, I'm not really a massive JavaScript developer. I'm slowly becoming one. Unfortunately, maybe it's not the right
kind
word.
of, it happens to people when they start doing stuff on the internet.
I start doing things on the internet, and you just need to know JavaScript to do your job, and it's a bit annoying. But it is what it is. And I've heard that one's quite nice and maybe quite nice. If you know JavaScript is your like main language, then maybe give that one a try. I've heard the documentation's really good. Discord PYs it's good unless it's a new feature, then it's very flaky. But maybe you could contribute to the docs like I want to do.
They're all pretty good, really, especially when like if you go and have a look at the Discord docs manually and you think about
they've also got a million examples.
Oh, so, Discord Pi?
It's got loads of examples in the docs of like how to use, like how to do a command and how to listen for messages and stuff like that. So a really common example is if you type ping, it will respond with Pong and that kind of thing. You can build that kind of bot very easily.
Very nice. Well, we are running close to time.
I'm quite good at talking.
It's wonderful. This has been so much fun. Thank you so much, and thank you to all of our viewers. So I have to wrap up now, so I'm going to have to boot you out of our stream whilst I do the wrap up.
One thing so I've just noticed in the chat that's quite funny is someone said at their previous job they turned up on a Monday and a fancy pants engineer said, I had some free time on Sunday evening and now all of our systems are in Ruby. I didn't know Ruby, so I quit. I feel that, I feel like it's very common among students and, to be fair, some developers to fancy tools, using all these fancy tools. And sometimes, it's just about building the thing. It doesn't matter about necessarily how you did it.
A common question we have had throughout doing these streams for the last 2 days is, which programming language should I learn and why? And there is no logic, rhyme, or reason to that discussion. They all have different use cases. You all derive joy from them in different ways. And if someone wants to rewrite a thing in a thing, they're going to rewrite a thing in a thing. So anyway, thank you so much, Will. If people want to see any of the want to catch up on any of the things we've spoken about today and find you or find these projects, where can they go?
So a good place to start is my Twitter. You can come over there. I'm constantly talking about fellowship things I'm doing. But another good place is if you follow you can have a look at the MLH Fellowship organization, which is just github.com/MLH-fellowship. So that's a really easy place to find all the Discord bots I've written. But they're also pinned on my GitHub profile, which is the same as my username on Twitter. Cool. I also love the fact that you spelled my last name correctly, which no one can do.
2 S's, 2 L's. I checked explicitly.
Everyone misses the second L, and I just choose. I think when my MOH email got made, sorry to call Nick out, but it was missing the L, and I went off to a bad start, Nick.
Well, awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks so much, man. I will bid you adieu and get on with the wrap up.
Yeah,
have
no
a
worries.
great rest of your evening.
Bye.
Oh, cut him off mid goodbye. So hi everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to our little bit Friday night bot madness. I hope you enjoyed that. As I said, I wanted to cover this topic today because I think we've spoken a lot about going out and finding Hacktoberfest projects, and I thought it would be a really light, fun way for folks to easily like a good source of infinite projects. Basically, there's a couple of things like this that I really like. Another one is N8N. N8N is kind of like a Zapier clone, and the cool thing about N8N is that they put their nodes, which are like the building blocks in this like visual tool. Their nodes are all open source, and so like if you want to make a quick contribution or you want to make a quick project, it's really easy to go find an API or a service you use and make a node for N8N. It's like an infinite fountain of projects, and Discord bots are very, very similar. And Will is one of the people I know who writes the most Discord bots, and I think I got exactly where I wanted to be out of that. So thank you all for tuning in and hanging out with us and talking to us in chat. Just to briefly reiterate, we are here all month with the Hacktoberfest Help Desk. We are hopefully here to help you with your Hacktoberfest questions, whether they be big or small. If you have a question, you can submit that to raise.dev/Hacktoberfest. If you go to that site, you will find our lovely little support form where you can submit your question. We have a field in there for the URL to your issue and your pull requests, so we can get in there and see what you need help with. And we will find one of our lovely guests who is able to help you. We'll ask you what the tech stack is so that we can match you with an amazing guest. Those guests, let's talk about those guests. If you want to find out who we've got coming up on the show, you can go to twitch.tv, RaiseDev's schedule. Currently, that page is a week by week thing. So right now you won't see any schedule because we've just finished the week of shows. But if you check back in on that over the weekend, you should see our next week of shows. We currently have 38 guests lined up for you this month, and that is not nearly all of the ones we plan to bring on. So we have some really wonderful guests. Let me give you a sneak peek of the folks that we've got coming on next week. So on Monday, we've got Jacob from the HTT Pi project, a really neat open source project. Jacob's going to be with us on the Monday morning show. On Tuesday, we have Florian Dries, Microsofty from here in the Netherlands, actually. Really awesome developer. She's going to be with us on Monday, and later on in the day on Monday, we've got two really cool things happening. So on the 4 p.m. Central European time show, we have Brian Douglas from GitHub coming on to talk to us. Brian Douglas also does a really cool Twitch show that you can catch. I can't remember his handle, but it's easy to find. He's also on the GitHub show quite often, and something I'm really excited about for that morning on that evening on October 6th. So that's this time slot. We've got the crew from Dev2. So Dev2, if you haven't seen it, is a really nice developer community. Basically, it's a place to post like developer blogs, and there's discussions and all kinds of nice chat rooms. Dev2 recently open sourced the software that they build Dev on, and I'm really excited about this because they basically open sourced a community platform. It's called Forum with an E, so like forum is in like a forum, but with an E instead of a U. And Nick is one of the engineers who works on Forum, and he's actually going to be coming onto the show, I think, at least once a week during Hacktoberfest with some of the Dev2 team to just code on Forum and to get through issues and pull requests on Forum. So that first show is going to be October 6th during this time slot. We've also got Penelope Thippen coming on the show on the 7th of October. We've got Flaky, who, if any of you are involved in the Mozilla communities, no doubt you'll know about Flaky. We've got Shana Matthews, another Microsofty, coming on the 8th of October. We've got Chris Hunt. Chris Hunt, again, this is the second time this has happened to Chris Hunt today. Chris Hunt is in the chat. Chris Hunt will be coming on the show with us on the 9th of October during this slot. So some really great folks coming on the show next week. I will get that schedule online for you as soon as possible so that you can see it. And other thing I want to say on that front, we are here all month. You are watching. What do you want to see? What do you want the show to be? We had a plan when we started this, which was we wanted to open Hacktober. We wanted to answer Hacktoberfest questions. We wanted to help people out. Is that the most useful thing we can be doing for you? Is there something else that you'd like us to do? Our founder, John Britton, keeps throwing ideas at me. So to read you one of these ideas, his latest idea that he sent me during the show, his latest wacky idea that I'd love to see whether you would like. He's got a couple. First of all, one of his ideas is he will make a contribution to a project, and then we'll get the maintainer of that project on to review his PR live. So that's one option. Another option is a kind of chain, a chain of pull requests. We'll find a project. We'll find or make a project. Someone will start a pull request, and then we'll hand that project over to the next guest, who will then add something onto it, and we'll keep going that way. Kind of like those like games where you start a story and then hand it on to continue the story. That, but with a project. So those are two ideas. If you have any other ideas or anything else you'd like to see, do let us know. You can let us know in the Twitch chat. You can let us know on Twitter. I'm sure you all know how to get hold of me at this point. You can let me know, or throw us an email to contact@raise.dev. And other than that, just a final note. Why are we doing this? Why are we here for Hacktoberfest? Why am I on Twitch at 11:52 on a Friday night? That is because we here at Raise.dev are here to help you level up your software engineering career. We are trying to bridge what we call the experience gap. So I'm sure you've all had this feeling of you've encountered a job post or an opportunity that is asking or expecting experience that is impossible to get without having had the job first. You know what I mean? Where you have like, hey, this is a junior development job that requires senior level experience. How am I meant to get that experience if I can't get the job? That kind of situation. We call that the developer experience gap. There's a blog post about that up on our site, on our blog, raise.dev/blog. And we are here to try and address that problem. And how are we doing that? With our expert coaches. Right now, whilst we're in early access, you can sign up to meet with a Raise.dev coach. They'll go through a kickoff session with you, and they'll set goals and then work with you to achieve those goals, to get you the experience you need to get that first dev job, to get a promotion in your current job, to finish a project, to change careers or industries, whatever it is you want to do. Right now, we're in early access. This is our first public launch of like our online solution, I guess you could call it, our online product, following a pilot. If you're interested in hearing from someone who's been through Raise.dev, you can hear from one of the folks who went through the pilot. They actually came on the show in our 4 p.m. CEST slots, the one before this one, and that video is on Twitch. You'll be able to find it. It's the guest name was Xing Liu. So if you go look for that video, you can hear from her experiences being on Raise.dev, coming from a different industry. She was an environmental engineer, came through Raise.dev, had all the coaching, had the pair programming, and eventually landed her first dev job, and she speaks about her how the Raise.dev team helped her negotiate and helped her get compensation that she was happy with. And actually, she's just moved on to her second job since moving into development, which is super neat. So you can find that and all of our guest videos on our Twitch channel. So last thing for me to say with my very long and protracted wrap up now. If you liked this and you want to come hang out with us again, you can follow the channel on Twitch to get notifications from Twitch. One thing I will say is Twitch have done the YouTube thing now, where a follow isn't quite enough. You also have to go and tick some bells to make sure you get the notifications. So please make sure you do that if you want notifications. And the other thing you can do is go again to that raise.dev/Hacktoberfest channel. And at the top of that form, at the top of that site, there's a form that will let you stick your email address in if you want to be notified about the upcoming shows. And what that will do is we'll send you an email every day to tell you what shows are coming up that day. So yeah, that's everything from me. Thank you all so much. It's been a wonderful and very fun first week of doing these streams with y'all. I'm looking forward to kicking off again on Monday. We will not be broadcasting during the weekend. We'll be back again Monday, 4 p.m. Indian Standard Time. That's 12:30 a.m. Central European Standard Time, 11:30 UK time. And if it's in America, if you're in America, it's 6:30 a.m. Eastern New York time. So I don't expect to see any Americans on the show at 6:30 a.m. We'll see you at the 10 a.m. New York time or the 4 p.m. New York time shows later on in that same day. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful night. That has been the Hacktoberfest Help Desk for October 2nd.